was the most religious, God-fearing woman I've ever met in my life. And, someone who lived a life like that, you can understand them having no belief in God or any sort of faith whatsoever, because why, there's so many people play that victim mentality. Like, why me? Why this, that, and the other? It's very, I can understand those people. I can get it. Like, if you were one of those people, the life that you lived, it's an understand. Like, I can comprehend that. Like, that fits in my brain. And she wasn't. She was like you. She had so much faith in God. And one of my biggest regrets in life, and I can't wait to see her again and just give her a big hug and tell her I'm sorry I even said that to her, that I didn't believe in God. Like,
Hey, James. How's it going, bud?
I'm doing good, dude. Thanks for having me on the show. Super excited. It's been way too long, man. It's been way too freaking long.
I haven't seen you since we were in Texas.
Dallas was, I think, the last. No, Arizona maybe was the last events I did. I don't know if you were in Arizona.
No, I couldn't make it to Arizona.
So it was Dallas was the last time I saw you.
Yeah.
And then we're reconnecting in a couple weeks. I'm excited to see you out here in Vegas. And meet your beautiful new puppy. Yeah. I had the pleasure of seeing virtually. I get to meet her next in a couple weeks. I'm so pumped. But yeah, it's gonna be a good time. I'm excited to see you. We're gonna do some good content and hang out, and it'll be a fun time.
Yeah, it was nice talking to somebody that didn't get offended by everything I said.
Well, dude, we're cut from the same cloth, my friend. I'm in the same boat as you. Like, we had an episode on our show on Tuesday. We had political prisoner Chris Worrell on our show. He's going into jail for 10 years, 1 month. He gets sentenced on the 18th. Wow. And I was doing the introduction for the show, and I tripped over my words, and I was like, oh, shit, I'm retarded, guys. Sorry. And someone in the comments was like, you can't say the R word, freaking out. And I'm like, lady, this is not the show for you. We are not sorry. We do not apologize. And if you have a problem with it, oh well. So we're cut from the same cloth, my friend. That's why I like you.
Yeah, I'm not going to back down from my beliefs or what I say. They're words. In fact, I was, like I've openly stated, I didn't want to, but a buddy of mine, that a military friend, said that you've got to admit to people out loud that you have PTSD. I was like, well, I don't want to. But I started doing that. And so I saw this counselor that was getting me set up. She was just asking questions, then getting me into the counselor. And she kept on mentioning the word trigger. I was like, no. I was like, I don't get. She said, now, if it's too triggering, tell me about it, and we can work through this together. And these were just questions about my past. I was like, man, I don't get triggered. I was like, I don't even like that word. I was like, but it's just a word, so I'm not offended by it. But I was like, ma'am, I'm Gen X and an Okie. I'm like, we don't get offended. I was like,
I don't care. Yeah, I don't care.
I was like, you're not going to say anything worse than what I've already dealt with. And their words, like, your opinions aren't going to change my life any. You don't pay my bills. And even if you did, I still wouldn't, change it.
Josh, that's the thing. Like, look at what's going on in the world. Look at what's going on in the country. And if you have an issue with words, like if words are something that bother you, how are we going to fix all of the issues that we have going on in this country right now, let alone the entire world, with World War III knocking on our door? How are you going to get through that if you can't handle someone saying a word? Like, really think about that. Like World War III is literally knocking on our doorstep. And they act like if something like that happens, there won't be any attacks on our soil in 2023 with these world powers. Like, that won't just happen if World War III kicks off. And you're worried about a word, a fucking word. Like, we need to get our priorities straight. Like, if you don't like that word and you don't want to hear it, go watch something else that's a little bit more padded room for you. Go somewhere else, because there's people in this world that are a little rough around the edges. Like, I always tell people, you should hear me and my mother have a conversation. It's like, fuck this, a piece of shit that. Like, that's just who we are. Like, we're sailors, and it is what it is. And if you don't like we were saying off air, if you don't like my authentic self, if you don't like me being me 100% of the time, then we're not going to get along. Like, I don't want anybody who's going to pretend to be something else just because they feel like that's what fits the situation. I want you to be you 100% of the time. I want 100% authenticity all of the time. And if you're not going to deliver that, if you're going to be some fake cookie cutter package thing because you think that's what you're supposed to do, then you're only fooling yourself at the end of the day. And it's really sad.
Yeah. I'll um I'll watch what I say a little bit around certain environments like children, stuff
That's a
like that.
different story.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
my daughter, I don't watch what I say around my daughter,
No, but
at all.
around other people's children, like, and I catch myself all the time, like even my nephews, like,
Yeah.
I'll be playing a video game with my nephew, and he'll score a touchdown on me, and I'm like, fuck, I'm like, oh shit, I
Yeah.
can't say that, you know.
Yeah.
He's
We
like
don't know
9. I'm like, oh damn it.
we don't know how other people raise their kids, how they train their kids. Like me, when my daughter falls and hurt herself, I don't coddle her. I love my daughter. She's a little princess. I'm always scared that
Oh,
she's going
dude,
to get really hurt and stuff. I
of
mean,
course.
my whole life, no matter what, is revolved around her. However, if she gets hurt, eh, I'm not raising her to be safe. I'm raising her to be strong. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't coddle her when she gets hurt. And so she's learning not to cry, because I was like, is crying helping? And I'll tell her, I was like, breathe. Is crying making it better? No. She'll tell me no. I was like, okay, just breathe, relax, ignore it, and then we'll do something to ignore the pain or something. And she's gotten now that she'll do something that actually hurt, and she's fine.
Well,
But I'll see other people with their kids, and they'll call them, and then they're wondering why their kids cry every time, because it's that attention. It's addicting.
getting an ice pop, getting, a
Yeah,
reward for crying, that kind of behavior. And you're 100% right. It goes to the trophy generation, the participation trophy generation. Like, oh, you didn't do well enough to win, so since you didn't do well enough to win, we don't want you to feel bad. Here's a trophy. Or you fell and got hurt, so let me just baby you and coddle you.
yeah,
And this is why we have these 20-plus-year-old adults running around acting like victims 24/7. This is
yeah,
exactly why, because of the parenting, because of the coddling, because of the participation trophy. Like, life is not easy. Like,
yeah,
plain and simple, life is hard. You get kicked in the teeth sometimes, and I know, Josh, you know better than most. You're a true testament to, pulling your bootstraps up and figuring shit the fuck out and not being a victim. Most people in your situation would, oh, woe is me. I can never accomplish anything because of this, that, and the other. I'm screwed, and play this victim mentality. Like, please help me, give me all of the time. And they won't even attempt to try to figure it out on their own. They won't put one foot forward. And it's like that old story. It's like, you see the guy who's broken down on the side of the street, and he's sitting there just like waiting for somebody to stop and help him. But as soon as he gets behind the car and starts pushing it down the street, cars will start stopping because they see him putting in the effort, putting in the work, and
yeah,
they're like, okay, I'm going to help this guy out, because he doesn't just want a handout. He's willing to put in the work. He's just in a bad situation. Let me help him out. And that's really what life is about. You have to start it and get going, uh, to really get people to come and help you. And if you're going to play that victim, like you said, you hate that victim mentality.
yeah.
I can't stand it either. And that's what they're grooming these kids and these young adults to be. It's a victimhood mentality that they just thrive in. And it's sad.
One of the hardest, most demasculating things I've ever done was recently. I had to do a GoFundMe because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't work for 8 months, and and it was demasculating because I preached this, and then here I am, uh, trying to get a handout. To me, that's what it felt like, and it took understanding that I had to swallow my pride for my daughter. And then I
Mm-hmm.
had, a couple of people tell me, well, how are Christians able to help people if people won't let people know that they help, allow people to be that person? And so I did it, and it didn't end up nearly as helpful as I thought it was. But I'm very, very thankful for the people that did help. But it's
Mm-hmm.
still, it's embarrassing to me. I'm highly embarrassed that I even had to do that because I mean, yes, I didn't expect to ever be in that position, but to me, it's like saying I didn't work hard enough before to be able to save up money so I could pay for 8 months of not working.
But
You
that's
know, because
that's the thing, dude. Like there's a very big difference between being a victim and asking for help.
yeah,
There's a very very big difference. And people, especially men, alpha men like you and I, it's very difficult to ask for help. It
yeah,
is a prideful thing. It's very hard. But it took me a really long time to realize this. How good do you feel when you are able to help somebody out who's in a tough situation? It's not like they're begging for help, or you're just being a good person. Like you just see someone who needs help. Like, doesn't that feel rewarding? Doesn't that just
I-
feel good?
it's a hundred
And
percent why I started my podcast.
yeah, absolutely, that's awesome. And it's almost like we're it's not like you're being a victim by asking for help. You were putting in extenuating circumstances that were out of your control. You
Yeah,
were laid up in a bed. You had serious surgery, back surgery, and it's not like you didn't want to work or didn't want to do what you could do. It was the situation that you were in,
yeah,
and there was literally nothing you could do. And you have to put food on your family's table. You have a young daughter. You have a wife. You have animals that you have to tend to,
yeah,
and you have to figure something out. So it'd be one thing if you were like, "Oh, I'm never gonna work again. Like, just
yeah,
please help me out, guys. Like,
yeah,
I'm done working." Like, that's a totally different story. But you're still not like while you were laid up, you were still doing content. You were still putting out shows, weren't
yeah,
you? You
yeah,
were
yeah,
still doing something. And putting like people don't understand how much work goes into doing a podcast or doing any sort of content. It's a lot of work. It's very time consuming, and it's not traditional work is like sitting in a cubicle or doing construction, but it is work. It takes a lot of time, and it's not like you were sitting here like, okay, please just help me, I'm going to sit on my ass and do nothing. You're like, you know what, I have an opportunity here to get behind the microphone, even though it's not something that I really like doing. You're like me, you don't like being behind the camera, I hate it. But I'm going to take this opportunity and get behind the camera. And even if I help one person with the words that I have to say and the things that I have to say, that's a win in my book.
yeah,
And in my opinion, you'd be doing a disservice to the people that helped you, because that feeling that they would get from helping you, being in that situation, you'd be taking that away from them by not explaining your situation and giving them the opportunity to help you,
yeah,
because that's really what it is. And I was in a similar situation. Like I left my successful career of sales behind when the China virus hit.
yeah,
I could have went back to sales, but I'm not the type of person that when things shut down, I want hands. I didn't take on any unemployment. Like I didn't want it because I thought it was going to be 2 weeks at first. I was like, oh yeah, two
yeah,
weeks, whatever. I don't need the unemployment. I'm good. Like I don't want any of the government's money. Tax dollars. I don't want it. All of a sudden, 6 months later, I'm like, all right, I'm blowing through my savings. Like I'm
yeah,
literally blowing through I need to get some unemployment. It was a huge hassle to get it because I'm an independent contractor. It was a big disaster.
yeah,
And I finally bit the bullet, and I didn't, even though I didn't want to, and I got unemployment. And then when jobs opened up and the world started to open up, I could have very easily gone back to sales, but if I had did that, my show would cease to exist because I was on call all of the time.
I was
And
in sales. That's the exact same thing.
yeah,
So I
I,
understand.
yep, I was on call 20, like basically from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. I was on call
Yeah,
every day. So I couldn't schedule shows. I couldn't book guests. Like it was literally like if I had an appointment, like right now, my shows are every Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 Eastern. We're live, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And if I had a call at 7:30, I'm missing my show. Like I'm
yeah,
not, there's no way I'm making it. So the show would have ceased to exist. So I sat and I prayed heavily on it. I didn't know what to do because the impact that we were making with our show, the responses that we were getting, and I prayed on it. And the whole reason why I started the show was I truly believe a calling from God. I think God told me that I should use this because these are things I've been studying and talking about for years, and you couldn't talk about it years ago. Like these are things
yeah,
that you couldn't say. People would look at you like you're fucking nuts. Like James, there's not pedophile islands evil
Yeah.
satanic cults, like they don't exist, like you're crazy. And now everybody's talking about it. But um, it was literally like God told me to use my knowledge and start. Now is the time to start speaking about this stuff. Now is the time to start talking about it and bringing it to the forefront. And the responses that we got, it was unbelievable. And I'm so thankful for our audience, the people that tune in every single week. It's truly humbling. I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be doing something like this, because like you, I hate being behind the camera. I
Yeah.
hate social media. I'd rather just be by myself, hanging out with my close individual circle. But it's no longer time for that. Our country's under attack. Our freedom's under attack.
Yeah.
Everything that we believe in is under attack. And if good men sit by and do nothing, we lost already.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of another reason why you started doing what you're doing as well, because you couldn't just sit by and do nothing while our country is being destroyed right in front of our faces, and evil is just frolicking in the streets, as if it's nothing, and people are okay with it. And if we just sit by and say nothing, then they won.
Yeah.
So I could have I turned down, well over six figures in income to do this show, and it got very close to where I had no money in my bank account. And I was never I was very adamant about not taking donations, and about not doing any give send goes or anything like that. I was very adamant about it, and it got to the point where I was like if I don't do something, like I'm in big trouble. Like I got to go back to work, and I won't. Then the show ends. So it was like I had to make a move, and wasn't like I wanted to be a victim. And I really rationalized it with how much work that I'm doing, and how much, like, I've spent probably well over 30 grand between programs, equipment, travel, just on this show, producing and putting out content for people to see. And I was like, you know what, like if I keep doing this, like I'm like monetarily, I won't be able to continue putting out this content. Like I won't be able to do it. It's not possible. So I had to swallow my pride. And just like you, I didn't get a ton of support via donation. I got a lot of prayers, which was fantastic, and I love those more than the money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was just like swallowing my pride in doing that. And it was very difficult. It was a very hard decision, and I had to really pray on that.
Yeah. It's anytime. I grew up around. There are two types of people, and most of the people I grew up around were takers. There's givers and takers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say there's givers and takers. There's also the people that don't give, they don't take, but they don't give at all. And I grew up
Mm-hmm.
around them, so I guess three types of people. And I knew I did not want to be a taker. And unfortunately, with my ex-wife, I borrowed money a lot from people, and I hated it. It killed me. And I swore I'd never do that again. And that was, oh God, 12, 13 years ago. And I hadn't had to do it since then until recently. And like you, I could have stayed in sales, and I made salesman of the year. I was good at my job,
Mm-hmm.
simply because I'm not a salesman. I just I have a relationship with people.
Because that's that bingo. That's why I was good. I
And
called it a warm up. Like I go into your house and I wouldn't start my sales pitch until we were best friends.
yeah, and people, and I legitimately, in fact, a lot of my people on my Facebook page are people I sold cars to. We would have conversations. I could have conversations with people that believe completely different than me, because I don't need you to believe, and I'm not going to try to convince you, and I'm not going to get offended, because again, if I grew up the way you did, around the people you did, with the experience you did, I'd probably believe the same way you do.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Makes
but
sense.
what I started noticing, and this was at the beginning of right before uh, the China virus came out.
China.
Um, I what I what I saw was, because I was just becoming a Christian. So at that time I was a little religious, because I think everybody becomes that way when they first become a Christian. I still didn't believe in doing magic words or anything like that. When people say, "Well, what day did you become a Christian?" I'm like, "That's weird." It took me
Yeah.
20 years to become a Christian.
Yeah.
But what I noticed was the only people that wore graphic T-shirts of substance were Christians. but they were cheesy, like uncomfortable, and they were cheesy, and they only spoke to other Christians. I was like, what? I was like, I read what was written in red, and that's what's the most important thing to me. The words in red, as in, if people don't understand words Jesus spoke, I say that's what makes you a Christian. Everything else is just, confetti. Um, but I started noticing nobody was getting helped. And so I was like, I need to do this. So I started a t-shirt company. It took a lot of prayer, especially getting the shirts that are a little offensive. Like my Jesus is a badass was the first one. And
Which
then
ruffles some feathers.
it actually ruffled more feathers than my other one, which is in quotations as it says, "Don't be a dick," the Bible.
Yep.
That one more people like than the other one. But a lot of people do like Jesus because they're like, well, it's true.
He was a badass.
It's speaking Trailer Park Joe, the people I
Hmm.
grew up around. And I noticed these people needed help. Well, my first mission was I wanted to go after the 1%, because you've heard of the 99 and 1. And
Hmm.
because I was really religious at that time. But as time grew on, I realized more than anything, I was fighting a war against the Pharisaical Christians, the ones that cared more about the law or the Bible than they cared about the people, God's people. And I'm like, wait, the words I read, okay, we're in Genesis. It says we're made in God's image, and I don't claim to be a super biblical person, even though a lot of things I do are biblical. That's
Hmm.
not my intent, because the Bible came after, like hundreds of years after, and
Yes.
there's so much things that we could go into that I could really offend people on because of the research I've actually done about the
Mm.
making of, and the politics behind everything. But I'm not going to go into that. But
Well, it's written by man.
yeah, and I'm like, I trust God. I
Hmm.
that's who I trust. I've had to learn. I tell people I became a Christian honestly. I didn't get convinced to become a Christian. I didn't
Same.
see other people. It's because I grew up in hell. And when you grow up in hell, you're not going to scare me into heaven. Because trust me, you're not going to. I mean, the things I dealt with from the moment I came out of my mama, even before, you know, is stuff that, yeah, I'll put it this way: in the over in the dozen years I was a police officer, and a lot of people think I got PTSD from that, and I'm like, no. I was like, I never once saw anything that was worse than I'd already grew up in,
Hmm.
so I was conditioned for it. Um, but I'm like, my thing was helping them people that were lost, and speaking to them the way Christians wouldn't or couldn't speak to. And I I it changed since then, because I realized that I'm always getting into arguments, debates with these Pharisaical Christians. I was like, they don't recognize themselves. But you know what? The Pharisees didn't recognize that they were the bad guy either. They didn't recognize that they weren't helping
They
people,
thought they
that
were
they were
doing
hurting
good. Yeah.
people. Exactly. They thought they really believed. Yes, there were some that were in it for the money and stuff like that, but you know, I don't really believe all of them were like that. There were people with very good intentions that they thought, they swore, even the ones that were in it for that were getting money and stuff, they really believed what they were saying.
Hmm.
And they were hurting people, and people will say, well, Jesus, they didn't like Jesus because they didn't accept Jesus as God. I was like, no, Jesus didn't say he was the Messiah until 2 years after they met Jesus. It was because of a discrepancy in interpretation. Remember, the very first thing was about healing on the Sabbath, and they said you
Hmm.
can't, and he said yes you can. I mean, you take care of a lost sheep and stuff, and this sheep that's fallen in the briars, or so, I can't remember exactly what it says, but you do that. Why can't you help a person? But anyway, Genesis says we're made in God's image. I get sidetracked so easily.
I'm with
um
you, dude.
I have rabbit trails all over the place. um
Dude, so why, cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, but Genesis, we're made in God's image. Jesus said, the most important commandment. Remember, the most important commandment is to love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your might, and just the same, just the like, um, love your neighbor as yourself. Just the like. Everybody seems to forget that part. Just the
Hmm.
like. They're like, I had people argue with me. Well, it says love God first. I'm like, you're not paying attention. It says just the like, meaning just as importantly, just
Mm-hmm.
equal to loving God, love your neighbor as yourself. The reason why it says that is because we are all made of God. We are
Mm-hmm.
part of God. God is the ocean, right? We are the raindrops. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's actually a very good analogy.
Uh,
That's a
and,
very
and a lot of people don't get that. I was like, that's why whenever I'm loving you, I'm loving God.
mm-hmm. Because we're God's creation. Like I
It's
don't.
like it
It's
doesn't
not.
matter.
It's not that difficult.
You don't have to be a Christian for me to for me to be loving God. And worship means work.
Mm-hmm.
It means doing stuff. And people are like, "Oh, you're a Christian of works." I don't give two shits to giggle what you call me. I'm like, but I don't believe that you become a Christian by the works you do. I think you do the works because you're a Christian. But you don't have to be a Christian to do works. You
No.
know, um, but but you do stuff. You don't just worship and pray, because worship to you to a lot of Christians is just praying.
Yep.
Hell, I've had people say,
Showing up to church.
yeah, and I'm like, I actually quit even going to church as much. I go on Thursdays, and that's because I volunteer as a security, armed security for Leon Benjamin.
Nice.
And yes, I do enjoy hearing him and stuff, but to me, it's following somebody's heart.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy their heart. But anyway, so it says that, but then Jesus also said, "You can do greater things than I." You know, and people say, well, he said because he goes to the Father, therefore you go through. I was like, no, he said because I'm going to the Father, because he's not going to be on this earth as long, so you have more opportunity to do greater things than he. But why would he say that we can do greater things than he? Well, that's because we're part of God. And then
Mm-hmm.
he also said, when somebody said when the Pharisees said, well, you called yourself God, he said, aren't we all little gods? Doesn't the Torah say that? Well, he said that, and the Torah in Psalms says, that we are all little gods. But then when he's at the party and his mom knocks on the door, I believe it was Peter that answered the door and goes to Jesus and said, hey, your mom's here. And I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember exact words or anything.
Dude, you're
He
better than
said,
me, dude.
he said, who's my mother? You're my mother. You're my brother. You're my sister. What was he saying there? Nobody explains that. Well, it was very clear to me. He was saying that we're all equal. We're the same. We're part of the same.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're part of the ocean. You know, there's plenty of times in the Bible where he talks about this stuff, and yet people, it just goes right over their heads, and they try to separate and say, oh, we're supposed to be separate from everybody. I'm like, that's not what Paul said.
No.
Paul was not telling everybody that. Paul wrote a letter, and people forget this. I hate it when people say, well, this is all God's word. No, it's not. These were letters from Paul to the disciples in Rome, saying, hey guys, you've heard the expression when in Rome,
Yeah.
do as the Romans do. It's because of this, because they were in Rome and they were becoming acclimated to the Romans, and they started doing that and forgetting what they were there for. And he was saying, hey, don't forget why you're there. You've got
Mm-hmm.
to remain your mission. He was talking to them, not to everybody else, the whole world. Otherwise, and I've said this, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, literally. He said in 1 Corinthians 9:22 through 23, I became weak to win the weak. I became all things to all men so I can win a few. Well, how can you do that if you're separate from everybody?
Yeah, you have to be in the trenches with
So
everybody.
are you a hypocrite? Is he a hypocrite? Is that what Christians are saying? Well, a lot of them are. It's because they're nitpicking about what they want and what they don't want, what they agree with, and they'll say, "Oh, things are taken out of context if it says something that they don't agree with." And you say,
Well,
"Well, this is what I believe this means," and it's like there's so much infighting and stuff. I'm like, listen, here, let's keep it simple. I was like, because again, if you're talking to Christians, you use the Bible.
mm-hmm.
And I've said, if I'm talking to a Muslim, I'm not going to use the Bible to tell them what they're doing is wrong or anything. It
Because that'll
doesn't
go over
make,
real well.
yeah. And people don't understand that. They're like, well, the Bible says this. I was like, well, quit using the Bible. They couldn't understand the simple question. I was like, I believe if you truly know God, you can talk about God without using the Bible. That was heresy to most people. I mean, they're like, that's impossible. You can't, but it's the Bible. I'm like, yeah, but they're not going to understand it because they don't even believe in the Bible. It's like using hell to convince people of heaven and to change their ways when they don't even believe in hell.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it's not going to work. All you're doing is trying to make them feel like shit. And so I tell people, I'm like, well, let's make it really simple.
That's
You
it.
know,
Yep.
make it really simple. Jesus said the most important commandment. Now, if your parents, I don't know if you, well, I know you had a good relationship with your mom, so we'll just go
Yeah, I
there.
have a good relationship with my parents.
Okay, good. With my life, I
Um,
never assume people even have parents.
yeah, I'm
Um,
very I'm very very blessed in that aspect. I
yeah,
have so many friends that don't
and
have
that's why I
parents.
hate it when people are hating on their parents and they had good parents or at least decent parents. Because
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
have very,
really?
very, very, and nobody's perfect. You know,
Yeah.
we had our, we still do have plenty of disagreements. Like they're
Oh
not a
yeah.
big fan of my father is not a, he's an old school conservative, doesn't like talking politics, money, or religion. So he's not a big fan of what I do.
Yeah.
But we still have a great relationship when it comes to everything else. But yeah, I get it.
But anyway, so if mother of God, I did it again. Why can't
Keeping it simple, keeping it
keeping it
simple.
simple. I said, okay, if your parents said, here's the house rules, but this is the most important rule, don't have anybody over.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that if other people say other things that are like, well, let's say your girlfriend or well, I can't say wife because you're with your parents. Let's say you're living with your parents. That'd be weird. Yeah, my wife is coming over. No. If your girlfriend said, well, I'm going to come over, let's study together. You're like, well, they told me that I need to study more, but their most important word, what they said was nobody comes over, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just because you can study more, does that mean that that's okay because you're studying so she can come over? No,
Mm-hmm.
it violates the most important rule. Well, he said the most important commandment was love God, love yourself, love your neighbor, right? If you're
Yep.
not doing that, I don't give two shits and a giggle what anything in the Bible says. If it contradicts that, you're like,
And
well, it says we're okay. It's okay to judge people in certain circumstances. Yeah, but are you doing that? There's this one part. Sorry, I did.
no, please do.
Um, everybody knows the Cast of the First Stone story, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you a different perspective on that. It's the same, but it goes a little deeper. Okay, everybody's like, well, it's about judgment, right? He without sin cast the first stone. Okay, every Christian I know says Jesus was without sin, right? Leave. You
Yes,
know,
without a doubt. Yes.
um, they say Jesus was without sin. Okay, so Jesus was without sin. So therefore, he could have cast a stone, couldn't he? And according to Jewish law, she was supposed to be stoned because she was an adulterer.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't he throw the stone? It's because it's not just don't judge people. It's just because you can doesn't mean you should.
That's actually a brilliant perspective, actually.
And a lot of people don't get that, and that's why I get judged a lot. I had to delete block. I don't have to block liberals as much as I have to block pharisaical Christians because they will bully me. They will constantly
Mm-hmm.
jump onto my thing and just machine gun
Yep.
text crap. One, even I made a podcast about a short little afterthought episode. I call them quick thoughts. Episodes where they're just short about something that I'm thinking about. He literally said that uh okay, I'm getting two of them mixed up. One guy said that I'm going to end up being my hippie loving Jesus beliefs are going to be end up getting him killed and getting all the Jesus is God Christians killed, and I will literally end up putting a gun to his head. I'm like, what? And then another guy said that Jesus was more akin to Mao, Hitler, and Stalin, and Mussolini than he was a hippie loving Jesus. I mean, people are actually saying this stuff. I'm like, what? I was like, first of all, what is a hippie loving Jesus? What exactly are you saying that he believed in love? That he literally said that. He said that's the most important commandment.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that so wrong? It's because it goes against what they believe.
Well, yeah, why is it far fetched to even think that? Like, it's absolutely wild to me, and this is exactly why it took me so long to find God because of
Yeah.
people like that. I grew up a Roman Catholic, and I went to church as a kid. I went to Catholic school, Catholic high school, and it
That
really
seems like
turned me
hell.
off. Huh?
I said that seems like hell.
Oh, it was the people I met was awesome, but other than that, it was school.
Yeah.
It was school. But it really turned me away from religion, and which ended up turning me away from God, um, because they were shoving it down my throat. And like I said earlier, I'm going to be myself 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to be me. One of my favorite compliments that I get from people that listen to our show and they see me at an event or they see me somewhere else, they're like, "Wow, James, you're the same off air as you are on air." That's one of my favorite compliments I've ever received, because you get what you get with me. Like you get what you see,
You're
kind of
authentic.
thing. Yeah, very. I try to be very as authentic as I possibly can be. Obviously with children and things like that around, there's certain extenuating circumstances that you got
Yeah.
to curb things a little bit, but very, very, very rarely am I not going to be my 100% most authentic self.
Yeah.
And I love that compliment, and people don't like that. Like it ruffles their feathers because I curse, because I'm brash. I say what I think. I'm not going to back down from a conversation or a debate just because I disagree with you, or just because we disagree. Like so many people don't want to have those hard conversations, even with their friends. Like this is what boggles my mind. Like if you're friends with somebody and they're doing something out of character, not doing something wrong, because it's not like your place to decide whether what they're doing for their life is wrong,
Yeah.
but it's out of character for them. And as a good friend or a family member, it's your job to have that hard conversation with them and be like, "Hey, listen, like you're fucking up. Let's correct it. Let's figure it out. I'm here to walk you through it, and be here for you." And a lot of people, when you do that, they take offense to that. They don't like that you're calling them out on your bullshit. But I always tell my friends, I'm like, "Yo, listen, like if I'm acting out of pocket, if I'm doing something that's out of character, and my life is going in a tailspin, and you see this and you don't try to help me, you're not a real friend. Like
Yeah.
you don't care about my best interests, because you're supposed to be my friend or a family member that knows me better than most people. This is why I keep you in my circle, because I trust you. And if you don't want to have those hard conversations, then we're not really friends."
Yeah.
And that's an issue with people. When I go to my, I've lost friends because of this, because they were acting, they were doing things out of pocket. Their life was going in a tailspin. They were acting out in their marriage, things like this. And
Yeah.
you go into your friend as a good friend, trying to be like I'm not trying to be a dick here, but let's figure shit out. Like let's talk about it. What's going on in your life, dude. And they don't like it. And it's very difficult to be that type of person in today's world, where everybody gets offended, where everybody thinks that their shit doesn't stink, that they're perfect all of the time. Even if you are very, very close friends or even family members in some cases. And it's sad that we're there. And one of my biggest regrets in life, because going to Catholic school, I was turned away from God and religion. I remember telling my grandmother, who, God bless her, she's no longer, she died 12, 13 years ago, but I told her that I didn't believe in God. And now this woman, her husband died when she was in her 60s, so like he died very young. My grandfather, she lost her son she had 6 kids. One died as a stillborn. One died at the age of 17 in a car accident. And then 2 of the other kids are, my aunts and uncles are nut jobs. They're fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And she was the most religious, God-fearing woman I've ever met in my life. And someone who lived a life like that, you can understand them having no belief in God or any sort of faith whatsoever, because why, there's so many people play that victim mentality, like, why me? Why this, that, and the other? It's very, I can understand those people. I can get it. Like if you were one of those people, the life that you lived, it's an understand, like I can comprehend that, like that fits
Yeah.
in my brain. And she wasn't. She was like you. She had so much faith in God. And one of my biggest regrets in life, and I can't wait to see her again and just give her a big hug and tell her I'm sorry I even said that to her, that I didn't believe in God. Like I could just, that image is laser ingrained in my head, her face of how she reacted. Like I'll never forget it. And, I was young. I was, 19, 20 years old. and it was because of religion. It was because of those people that were shoving it down my throat that I had to act a certain way, and I didn't understand it. And it took me many years. And like you said, when someone asks, what day did you become, like, you can't put a day on something like that. It's been the entire journey of everything, and like reflection, and that reflection eventually becomes prayer. And because that's what really reflecting is, in my opinion, is prayer.
Yeah.
You reflect on the things that you've done, and you ask God, whether it's for forgiveness or for help, or guidance, in that
Thanking
reflection.
you.
Yeah, and gratitude, absolutely, and lots of gratitude. In my opinion, that's probably the most important thing, is the
Right.
gratitude. Um, but it took me many years of that to really realize that I don't need religion. I don't need to be put in this cookie cutter box of what Christians want me to be, and still have a relationship with God. And that just because that human beings feel this way about me, and say I can't be a godly person because of who I am, doesn't mean that God doesn't love me because of their opinion. And it took me a long time to realize that. It was a lot and I'm far from a perfect Christian. I'm very far from, I'm a baby when it comes to being a Christian at this point, even with Catholic school, and even in my relationship with God. Like, I'm really just getting comfortable with praying, and praying with others. Like, these are things that I'm still getting better at, and learning, because it's still something that, like, I'm like a baby giraffe when trying to stand up for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of that, and a lot of people have a hard time with that. They're like, well, you should know this everything about everything by now.
Hey guys, I want to personally thank everyone for liking and sharing my videos. Uh, if you want to continue to see my content, all you got to do is press that subscribe button, and I'll notify you as soon as a new video comes out. I don't get paid for any of this. So if you want to buy some of my merch, like my shirts, like Jesus is a badass, or my Don't Be a Dick shirt, you can easily go to my merch store, which is at sogtv.org, which I will have it in the description at every video. So push that, go buy yourself a shirt. I appreciate it. Have a blessed day, and I will see you at the next episode. Thank you.